Welcome back to Northwest City Politics and Let's Know with Juanita. We're glad that you're joining us again this week. We're happy to have you watching our show. And we're very glad that there are people like you out there that are interested in the issues that are happening in the 9 cities in Northwest Community Television's viewing area. It's important for good government in your city that you're active and involved and that you relate back and forth with the city council and the staff of your city, that there's a good flow of information going back and forth. If you haven't watched our show before, each week we'll have on someone from one of the 9 cities talking about the current and future issues so you'll know what's happening in our cities. And then from time to time, we'll have people in from groups that affect all of our cities in different ways, which we're going to be doing tonight. Tonight, we're going to be learning about a couple of lake associations that formed in the city of New Hope. And we'll be having people on, and we'll ask you to take your pen and pencil out and put down their names, their emails, their phone numbers. In case you have any questions, you can be in contact with them, particularly if you live in their watershed districts. Now, I'm very happy tonight to welcome Jodie Taitt, Bob White, and Dan Stauner. Jodie is with, now I gotta make sure I say it right, the Meadow Lake Watershed Association.
Correct.
Right? Okay. Because then Bob is with the Friends of Northwood Lake Association.
Yes, that's correct.
And Dan Stauner has a big background, right? You've been on the city council, you've been on the Bassett Creek Watershed and the Shingle Creek Watershed, and you're also part of the Meadow Lake Association. So we're very happy to have all of you here with us tonight because water is an important issue, and people can learn a little bit about what's happening in the city of New Hope, but there's lots of other associations, lots of other lakes around in our surrounding area. Well, and then part of your association, because your Meadow Lake one has been around roughly 10 years and you're 5 or 6 years, right?
Yep.
So you've gone through a whole growth pattern. But when I talked with you before, you were saying about the importance of how you have to educate your members and even your board of directors so you can figure out what goals and plans to do. Maybe you could talk a little bit about it.
You know, we have to educate all of us.
Aha,
I mean,
right.
We formed this association. We didn't know nothing about water quality, and we knew we had a problem, but that was it. So we had to educate ourselves, and it was a learning curve. And we struggled at first, trying to just figure out what to do. We knew our problems.
Right.
Didn't know about how to fix them. We did work with Meadow Lake. We met with, I think, Jodie and your president, and they were very successful, and they kind of told us what they did, so we copied them.
Oh,
we did.
Why not?
And we put together a plan, and that helped us get going in the right direction and figure out what we needed to do.
Now, both of your groups have annual meetings and events to bring people in to teach them more about specifics, right?
Yes.
We do. We've had an annual meeting for the last 10 years, and that's typically in April for us, and we get together before the planting season starts because that gets to be serious time when we're working on our native plant gardens. But we do gather folks together and we announce things. This year we're going to be offering free reusable yard bags to everybody in our watershed. We had a donation of those. They're vinyl reusable yard bags, and that's a way of just, appreciating the folks in our watershed and reminding them of, again, another free offer.
Right.
Maybe that's what we need to do.
But it does help folks, realize that, there is a different way to do things.
Right.
You don't have to rake your stuff into the water or into the curb and hope, that the street sweeper is going to come by and take care of it for you. So it's allowing people to empower themselves in a subtle way.
Right.
One of the things that I've noticed over time is that as people are moving away from their homes, as they've retired and moved on, is that we have lesser folks that remember what the green blob was. And as new folks have moved in with their younger families. And so it is challenging in that regard to get people engaged because the folks that were there and who are part of the founding of the Lake Association, we will never forget the green blob and the consequences of it. So that is one thing that we are challenged with, is engaging new people and younger younger adults and school-age kids to get involved too. So.
Yeah, so all of you people out there that live in these two watershed areas or lake association areas, and I'm sure there's many other lakes and groups, think about the fact that you might want to give a little bit of your time to your two groups and the other ones out there, because it doesn't work without having some people that are willing to put some time in, right?
There are also good organizations to help build your neighborhood, because you bring your people. Before we had the association, I didn't know that many people in the neighborhood, and now I've met Jodie, I've met people from the other side of the lake that I would never have met otherwise, and we all know each other, and it's been a wonderful thing. It's been a wonderful way to help us build our community, and I think Bob would probably say the same about his association. And so, if you want to be part of your community, this is a great way to show up at the annual meeting and meet your neighbors. That's an important thing. And for educational information, the watershed commissions are actually fairly good resources. If you go to their websites, they have links to different things. The internet these days is full of information about water quality and water issues. You can find it all over the place.
You can,
There's any number of websites out there. Some of it's technical and people get daunted by that. There's a lot of acronyms in it.
Everything nowadays, I think.
But they're understandable. If you like, I think both watershed commissions have glossaries on their websites to help you understand the acronyms. They didn't when I first started on the watershed commission, so my head was spinning there for a while. But there are a lot of resources out there for people who want to educate themselves about watershed. There are conferences that are sponsored by groups like the Freshwater Society, the Isaac Walton League. Minnehaha Watershed District has occasional programs they put on, which are quite interesting. I've been to several of them. So there's a lot of ways out there where you can get information, you can learn about the issues in water quality. And one of the things to keep in mind is that it's a developing science. It's a lot of things that are being proposed to do are experimental. We hope they'll work, not so much as we know they'll work.
But you got to have somebody try them. In order to find out.
But if someone's looking for the magic bullet, it ain't out there. You give up that search. Understand you're dealing with a complex issue that takes time to come to any kind of solution. As one person once said to me, we know an awful lot about how lakes go bad. We don't know much about how to turn around.
But you're working at it.
But they're working on it, and so you gotta learn and be patient.
Well, and then I think several of you had mentioned the importance of reaching out to other groups and establishing some relationships, whether it's the city or the PCA or the DNR. Maybe you can speak a little bit to that.
Well, for us, it's been very important to reach out, to the City of New Hope, the City of Plymouth, and to Bassett Creek Watershed, because when we first started our association, we just worked with City of New Hope, and then all of a sudden we thought, 60% of our watershed is in Plymouth. We better reach out to them, and so we reached out and we met them and started working with them, and right now the City of Plymouth is doing a project. It's called the Northwood Water Quality Improvement Project, and just west of 169, where the creek goes, there's some channels in there. There's a little park with a lot of woods, and this park, the elevation has a very steep drop. There's only water in these channels probably about 51 days out of the year, but when it rains, it's so steep that there's a lot of erosion. Just a lot of erosion taking place, and that's where a lot of that sediment's coming that forms the delta. So the city of Plymouth has a project that they're working on. It's a very complicated, very hard project. They have to remove a lot of trees, and the residents don't want the trees removed.
I remember reading about that, right.
Yes, it was a big issue a couple years ago where the city of Plymouth was going to remove 1,000 trees out of 6,000 trees in this park, and the residents didn't want that. And I can understand that they didn't want to remove that many trees, but these channels have to be repaired.
Right.
And so we've been going to the meetings with the city of Plymouth, and they invite us to the meetings. We have a number of people that show up. We probably have more people from New Hope show up than the city of Plymouth.
Right.
And our city officials come to those meetings. So it's important that we create relationships with them.
Right. So that's part of the whole process too. And then I think now you have newsletters to reach out to people too, right?
We do. We keep our newsletter going. We have even put advertisements for having local businesses the opportunity to advertise, and for a few dollars an issue that helps us keep our newsletter funded.
Right.
And it really is. It has really created a sense of community for us. We wouldn't be without that newsletter every spring and fall going out, because it's a way to reach folks that we may not even know, because we're distributing it to all of our 300 folks or households in the watershed. We do door hangers from time to time to remind folks to rake their leaves and keep their storm drains clean and that sort of thing as well. So we do have periodic communications with the folks in our watershed, and we meet with the City of New Hope at least once a year and talk about our work plan for the year and the things that are of interest to us, and please get back to us. And you can't do this in a vacuum. I mean, we had, our initial pain, if you want to, with our green blob that motivated us, but like Bob indicated, we had no idea, most of us, that what was happening and what we needed to understand. And sometimes it's understanding the right question to ask. And so we had to really start from scratch. And so the city did help us. The DNR was a great assistance to us. We had evening in the park conversation with DNR staff at Meadow Lake Park to help us discuss, various strategies to develop native plant buffers and opportunities to change the face of the park so that it would lend to water quality and improvements. And so it is, as we are all contributing to the water quality issues, even beyond our watershed, we're all kind of impacting our natural environment around us. We need to work together to figure out what we can do differently. To help change things and turn things around.
Well, one source as Jodie said, that you can't do it in a vacuum. One source of information is other lake associations. As Bob mentioned, when they formed theirs, they contacted the Meadow Lake Association. When we were forming the Meadow Lake Association, we talked to people from the Gleason Lake Association. And one of the things that I did when I was on the Shingle Creek Commission was host a meeting of all the associations within the Shingle Creek watershed. And it was fascinating. There was a lot of interesting things going on, different projects, different techniques being tried by different lakes. Schmidt Lake had a very interesting project that they were doing. So there's a lot of citizen activity out there in these associations, and it's important for associations to talk to each other. And if people are looking to start up an association, there's no better resource than the people who've been through it.
Well, and
TMDL is an acronym for Total Maximum Daily Load. It's a measure. You're supposed to basically, the standards that are set are the maximum you're supposed to have of phosphorus and other nutrients
for your lake to be good.
For your lake to be good. And the TMDL process is supposed to be a study is part of a planning process to look at the condition of the lake and what can be done to address it. It's supposed to lead you to an implementation plan with various steps that you can do to improve water quality. The only thing the Meadow Lake TMDL proposes is another drawdown. And actually a complete dewatering of the lake. The problem with that is that it would be done during the winter,
Right.
Because you want to freeze and consolidate the sediments. But during the winter, those sediments are full of hibernating turtles. And if you take away the water that insulates them, they freeze out and all those turtles die. So you wipe out the population of turtles and fish and other wildlife in the lake. And it has a very negative impact on it as habitat. So there's a trade-off there, and I, for one, was never convinced that the trade-off was justified. The last I heard about the Northwood TMDL, when I was, just before I left the Bassett Creek, was that they were looking at consolidating that in with several other small bodies of water rather than doing a separate TMDL for Northwood.
Our TMDL was originally supposed to be done in 2010, but it's been put off. Now we don't know if it's going to be done in 2018 or 2020. But the nice thing about the TMDL is that you get state funding along with that too, which is very important.
Oh, right, right.
But I think what we are kind of coming up with a plan that we are going to be contacting the Minnesota Pollution Control, who decides when the TMDLs are going to be done for lakes, and see if we can encourage them to get it done sooner, because so we can get some funding to fix it.
Right. Because the city has done some funding, and the
Bassett Creek has done a lot of funding,
but not necessarily of your lake.
Well, the Bassett Creek has done some. Bassett Creek Watershed Commission has done some funding. The city of New Hope has done a lot of their own projects, and the city of New Hope has done a lot of different projects to help Northwood.
Okay. Meadow Lake has done a lot of work with getting grants from different places.
We have. While the state and the watersheds or the commissions are figuring out the money and the TMDLs and measuring stuff, the homeowners we've taken action. We figured, what can we do ourselves on our own properties, and then expand it into the park to affect change.
Right.
And so what we've done is we've gotten grants from the Shingle Creek Watershed Commission as well to educate. And so we've gotten a series of grants for education to fund newsletters, to develop street signs that identify when you're entering the watershed, as well as curbside signs, portable yard signs that help remind folks that every curb is a shoreline. We've also sought DNR grants.
Okay.
So we've gotten a couple of those grants to, the first one we got was a education grant that funded a series of workshops to help us educate ourselves on how to establish native plant gardens and to restore some of the plants, the vegetation, to replace turf grass. As well as we've gotten grants for homeowners to also establish what we refer to as buffer strips along our shorelines, and the DNR likes a minimum of 25 feet in depth from the water line, and so we have worked with folks to develop those types of native plant gardens that we can establish that filtration. Those plants are their root systems are very deep.
Okay.
They're like 15 to 20 feet deep in comparison to like 6 feet for grass grass root systems. And so we have established a number of buffers around the shoreline. We're working with the city of New Hope to establish what we call Adopt a Plot in the park, in the Meadow Lake Park, which is, well, let me step back. In 2010, we had a scout garden, or a scout garden established as part of an Eagle Scout service project.
Right.
And that began a native plant garden near the water line. And so then we have expanded that since, and now we have Adopt a Plot moving along the shoreline from that original scout garden to establish native plants and remove invasives and develop that buffer strip. So the thing that we discovered to encourage folks to get involved is offer free stuff.
That sounds, well, because with another group in another setting, that if you wanted people to come to city meetings, give them food. the same thing, right?
Yes. So by developing grant proposals and getting grant monies and offering folks the opportunity to change their landscaping in their own yards, as well as working in the park itself. We've been able to educate folks along the way, get people engaged, and become active in changing our water quality. We've also engaged Meadow Lake School, because the school is in our watershed as well. And so we've worked with the school to, we had some students help stencil storm drains along the street to identify the drain and message no garbage down the drain, that sort of thing. And also we established a rain garden in the schoolyard to help catch and runoff from the parking lot that was expanded in the school, on the school property. And so we've been working with the school on a long-term relationship
and
to keep that garden going
at a very young age, right?
Yeah. Growing Green Guardians is our program. Yes.
And this leads right into what I wanted to talk a little bit about is water might be an issue for our audience out there, but there might be other neighborhood issues that people are concerned about and are wondering, well, how can I move it forward? What can I do about it? And since all three of you have had experience in growing a neighborhood association, I thought I would start with you, and a little bit thinking about, we've talked a lot about what brought you to the point where you wanted to start it, but what were some of the steps then that you took that you think helped it grow, your association, that people could then use with maybe even another issue?
The first question, I'm a lawyer, so of course I look at how do you organize it? How is it structured?
Right.
I think Northwood is a non-incorporated association. Ours is incorporated as a nonprofit corporation. So we have a registration with the state as a corporation and everything. There are a number of different ways to organize an association. But the first step, of course, is to get together basically a core group of people who are interested in putting things together and then doing the paperwork to form it. I believe you have a lawyer in your neighborhood who did that as well. So there was, it's helpful if you've got somebody in the neighborhood who's got the background and the skills to do it for you at no charge. So, but if not, then consider whether it's worth investing in paying someone to do a little bit of work for you. So that's basically the first step, is to determine what kind of form you want to take and how to put it all together. And we had a number of meetings in our neighborhood to discuss that in great detail. And we went over several drafts of our organizational documents before we finalized them. Our bylaws and a lot of debate about different parts of it, which was healthy. It's part of how yes, you do. You need that to work through and understand what kind of organization you're creating and what you want to do. So that's the first step. The next big step, of course, is getting people to show up with free stuff. And to write a check, because these things do cost some money. You do need some operating money. And I think our association has been pretty good about actually getting money from the residents for membership dues. So, but that just keeps you going. You need that to keep going. So from there, it's a question of getting people involved. And one of the reasons I stepped away from my involvement in the board of our association was because you've got to let the association survive.
Oh, right. And people come after you.
Yes. And that's how you know it's working. Because there are people who come after you. And there have been. And we've been pretty lucky in that regard. I know Jodie's been in it from the beginning. She's been working very hard for a very long time on it. But we've had turnover in the board. We've had new people come in. And that's healthy.
I think it is very healthy, but I think one thing that we all share is passion. And when it impacted our quality of life with the green blob, and Bob has had quality of life issues as well with the garbage surfacing after rain and all that. I think that also, because we felt that pain, so to speak, it motivated us to take action, to educate ourselves. But in the process, we discovered true passion for this, and true passion for your neighborhood. We've become really good friends, which, like Dan had mentioned, I didn't know Dan before the Green Blob. I didn't know Diane and his wife, and so we have found passion in the process, and that's, I think, what keeps us fueled.
Right. And then you had a brief story about a different issue, since we're talking about other kinds of groups. Maybe you can tell us a little bit what could be the beginning of an issue. Now, this was a resolved issue, but I'll leave it to you.
Well, sometimes, if you have problems, you don't have to form an association to take care of it. If you get issues in your neighborhood, maybe just 2, 3, 4 people get together. And that happened in our neighborhood. We had a problem of our sewers backing up into our house when it rained heavy.
Right.
And so a couple of my neighbors and we went to the city and we said there's a problem. We said, well, nobody's ever complained, surprisingly. But so we went out and did a survey of all the people along our street, and everybody says, yeah, we got water backing up into our house. So we took these surveys to the city, and the city said, okay, we got a problem, and they addressed the problem. They spent millions of dollars of digging up our street and replacing the storm or the sewer pipe.
Right.
And also, people of New Hope will remember when we started having inspections for our sump pumps.
Right.
And we had to hard pipe them outside. That kind of was part of the initiation of doing that, was our going into the city.
Making all those changes, right?
Yeah, because people had their sump pumps draining into their city sewer.
Right.
And so when their sump pumps ran from all the rain.
Right. Well, now that same process, though, could then go forward in what you were describing. Because you've got something, you get a few people together, you try to move it forward, and then you might discover there's many ways to move it forward, right?
There are, definitely.
Can I one thing from my experience in public office, too many people think the way to move something forward is come to City Hall, pound the podium, and say, I'm mad as hell, I'm not going to take it anymore. And that's not effective.
No.
What Bob described was a group of people who got together. What we did was a group of people who got together, educated ourselves, went to the city and said, here are the facts. Here's the information you need to decide on what we want to do. And that's how you effectively can approach any governmental body. Information. Because that's what they need, the people who have to make the decision need in order to make a good decision. So provide information, put as much of the emotion. Passion's great. It's part of what drives you.
Oh, yeah.
But you have to temper passion in your argument, because sometimes passion overwhelms the argument. I mean, I argue for a living, so. But if you let it overwhelm the argument and it all becomes entirely about emotion, then the information gets lost, and it becomes harder for the decision maker to take you seriously.
Well, I want to thank all of you so much for sharing lots of information with me. So I learned a lot in the process, and then for sharing the information with our audience out there. So I hope it will stimulate some of you to be thinking of your own community and maybe what might need to be done in your community. We're glad that you're with us, and we hope you join us next week. Bye.